Fansplained, a media criticism podcast with Ryan and M. I'm Ryan.
And I'm M. Fitting for this episode, actually. We're keeping this in. In this episode, we're continuing our deep dive exploration series into the MCU with Guardians of the Galaxy. This film was released in August of 2014, which feels like ages ago.
Yes, it does.
And is the 10th release into the MCU.
Thank you for that, because I could not breathe. I was still laughing too hard. Oh my god, it wasn't that funny. Oh, hi everybody.
Hi.
We're covering Guardians of the Galaxy today.
Hi.
So, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 is the 10th release into the MCU. However, it is one of the few Phase 2 films that sincerely stands on its own without prior canon knowledge or the necessity of having watched any prior films. There are little bits that overlap here and there, but you don't need to know what Thanos did in the Avengers to watch this movie.
No, you can literally just pop this in and watch it all on its own. Kind of the same way as The Winter Soldier, really.
I'd say it does that a little bit better than The Winter Soldier because it's so isolated. Well, whereas, like, Cap is not isolated.
It's hard not to be isolated in space.
In space. Technically, this is set in 2014. However, its place in Phase 2 is relatively mutable, aside from the Collector's appearance at the end of Thor: The Dark World. This is why we're doing it a little bit earlier. We changed our schedule around a little bit, because technically Daredevil happens before this, but all of the stuff that happens in 2014 happens generally around the same time.
Yeah. And
because this is so removed from everything else, as long as you kind of watch it around the same time you do Age of Ultron,
yeah,
it's still fine.
Yeah.
So that's where we are right now, because it's so separate from the center of the Infinity Saga, which is Earth. Because, like, you still have Thor, which is a space film, but the character is so connected to Earth and to the Avengers particularly that it makes it less isolated on that principle alone.
Yeah.
Which leaves Guardians of the Galaxy with the hefty task of introducing an entire ensemble without the benefit of prior solo outings, and finding a way to market a whole new set of characters without the benefit of other film appearances. Mm-hmm. Whereas, like, you'd have, like, Nat show up in other movies other than, I mean, obviously her own, because it came way late. But you get what I mean. Like, you'll see Thor and other stuff, you'll see the Hulk and other stuff. You don't really see the Guardians and other stuff up until you get to the crossover.
Yeah.
So,
plus, honestly, when you think about the Guardians in the comics canon, they aren't really, up until that point, they were not really all that popular.
No. They
it's
really
kind
weren't.
of like it's kind of like how Moon Knight has been getting some A tier treatment when he's always kind of been assumed to be like D tier in comics.
Except that I read Moon Knight before I ever read Guardians. I didn't read Guardians till the movie came out. I'd read Moon Knight, or at least some of it. So, given its wild concept and the obscurity of the comic's title relative to Thor, the Avengers, Captain America, whatever, the film was also burdened with the intense doubts as to either the necessity or even the remote commercial viability. I mean, like, a lot of us, when they announced this movie in 2012, like, before they dropped a trailer, I also had doubts. I'm like, we're making a movie about a talking fucking raccoon before we're centering a woman as a main character in a Marvel film.
I don't even think I knew about the Guardians movie until they dropped the trailer. And then when they dropped the trailer, I was like, oh,
yeah, okay. Once they dropped the trailer, I'm like, oh, this looks okay. Oh. But when they announced it in 2012, before they dropped the trailer, like, the year later, or really early 2014, I don't remember, yeah, I did not know. But I actually went to, like, the So this one, kind of like Dune, they don't do this a lot, but like certain movies will do this, like showing like 20 minutes or so of the movie to try and get people hyped about it before the movie comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that with Guardians, like we did with Dune, where like they give you the new trailer, they give you like a scene in the middle of the movie that's exclusive to people who went to, you know, this IMAX screening or whatever. And I was like, holy shit, this movie's gonna be amazing, because the scene that they showed in that was like when they enter nowhere.
Oh.
That's what they actually showed, not like the first of the movie or anything. It was just like that part in nowhere with like the David Bowie over the top of it, and I'm like, oh my god. Because you even knew the soundtrack was gonna do that. When you get to see that part of it first, I was like, oh my god. But when they first announced it, because I used to follow it pretty closely, like the announcements and stuff, and when they first announced it, I was like, you're making a movie about a talking raccoon. What?
Yeah, I genuinely don't remember even hearing about it until the trailer dropped.
I mean, I think that's true with a lot of people.
When that trailer dropped, I kept replaying it because I loved the rendition they had of Hooked on a Feeling on there. I was just like, yes.
So even the co-writer of the foundational Guardians of the Galaxy title, the one that was the reboot that was basically used as inspo for the movie, Dan Abbott stated, I think anybody who would have said that this would make a great main movie would have been laughed off. It's such an unlikely thing to do. So I think it's lovely to work on something and expose its potential to the point where a company like Marvel will say, yes, this makes sense. Because, yeah, I remember, like, even my personal reaction was like, fucking seriously? Where's Black Widow's movie, guys? What the hell?
Yeah, but at the same time, like, I don't know. I feel like when you enter the realm of superheroes, a talking raccoon really isn't that far.
But we still hadn't had a female lead, and that's why I was irritated.
I mean, yeah.
To be fair. So Abbott wrote the 2008 Guardians of the Galaxy reboot with Andy Lanning, and this comic is responsible for crafting the team out of previously unrelated characters created by previous Marvel writers. So this initially consisted of Star-Lord, who originally had his own, like, solo series. It was just called, like, Star-Lord. I remember reading the old 70s one, and it's wild, and then they reprinted it with, like, the new version of Peter Quill on the cover, but then it was, like, the old 70s comic on the inside of it. And that one's wild because Peter's dad isn't, like, an asshole like he is in, like, the Reboot comics, where, like, Jason is not a cool dude. In the old 70s comics, his dad's kind of like Corsair, but like he and Peter actually connect, versus like Corsair and Cyclops never really quite get there.
Well,
it's always really strained.
They kind of did in the animated series.
They do very little, but it's a similar kind of relationship where you get to space and suddenly your dad is this dude that you didn't know about in space.
Space pirate.
Like, I love the old weird Star-Lord, like he's in a relationship with his like mind meld spaceship.
Oh my god.
Yeah, like the ship is a character named Ship and is basically in a relationship with Star-Lord. It is sincerely the weirdest shit. It's like a mind meld thing, so it's not like a...
So it's kind of like the Doctor and the TARDIS at one point?
Kind of, yeah, actually. I think that's probably where Doctor Who got that.
Well, I mean, I don't know if they've done it before. I haven't watched all of the
I haven't watched Classic Who either, but, I mean, Classic Who was coming out about the same time Classic Star-Lord was, so who the hell knows? So you had Star-Lord, Rocket Raccoon, Groot, and then you had Phyla Vell, who was a character as yet unintroduced in the films. She first appeared in Captain Marvel as the daughter of Mar-Vell, and had even taken the Captain Marvel title previously. It's notable that she's not here because she is an open lesbian character.
Oh, hopefully that will change in the future.
Yeah, bring her in. I'm here for it.
Yeah, bring her in, Gunn. Come on.
And then you also had Gamora, Drax, and Adam Warlock, who we haven't quite gotten to, but we are getting to.
Yeah.
So Guardians of the Galaxy was still an existing title, however, the original roster, as it was being written in, like, the 70s or 80s or whenever it came out, I don't remember. I think it was 70s. I think it was also really old. Before the seminal reboot was also very different. Most of those characters have remained absolutely obscure. I did not recognize a single name on there except for one.
Yondu.
Mm-hmm. Who was borrowed from that team and plopped into this new movie, so he still has a connection.
I still really need to show you that Cinema Snob covering the Doctor Strange 70s show pilot.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Can't wait for that. That sounds amazing.
It was really strange.
So...
But
yeah. Nice pun.
Yes. Thank you.
So the writing and directing of Guardians of the Galaxy is a bit of a complicated maze as well. On one hand, it's often billed as the first MCU film written by a woman, because, again, it was pushed out before Captain Marvel was, even though we covered Captain Marvel first.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, it's treated as a singular vision of the writer-director. So, in the end, the film is formally billed as co-written by Nicole Perlman and James Gunn. Nicole Perlman had started out as part of the Marvel writing program in 2009. This is basically like an incubator for people coming up with, like, concepts to take the comics to films.
Well, we should get in on that.
I doubt that this is a great gig, though, because, and we'll get into this, Perlman chose Guardians, which she said in an interview with Time at the time, I think Marvel were a little taken aback when I chose Guardians because there were ones that would make a lot more sense if you were a romantic comedy writer or something like that. And she chose the one that was not romantic comedy because, of course, they expected the woman to write the romantic comedy movie, right?
Except you keep canceling the Rogue and Gambit romantic comedy that we were supposed to have.
Give me it. So Perlman wrote Guardians and spent 2 years immersing herself in the canon as she wrote the initial draft, and then she was also hired to write another one in 2011. However, when Gunn was hired as director in 2012, the direction literally changes. According to Gunn in an interview with Badass Digest, Perlman's script, quote, didn't work for him. He claimed a full rewrite and a BuzzFeed profile, and in an interview with Film Divider, which doesn't exist anymore. I had a hell of a time trying to find this. Yeah. Film Divider doesn't exist anymore. He also said, in Nicole's script, everything is pretty different. The story is different. There's no Walkman. The character arcs are different. It's not about the same stuff. But that's how the Writers Guild of America works. They like first writers an awful lot.
Do they, though?
Apparently, yes. According to a lot of, like, commentary on this, at least at the time,
I mean,
a lot of them would favor early writers' contributions depending on how much of it they keep, and there's a lot of weird politics that goes into, like, billing writing credits.
Yeah, but I don't know, man. It doesn't really feel like they favor first writers or early writers when so many of their scripts and they end up getting rewritten wholesale.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really feel that way to me.
Well, it means that, like, the early writers often still get billing, even if their script is not the one that's, like, the final product. Which is how you end up with a situation like this, where you have Perlman and Gunn being co-writers when they were not co-writers. They just kind of
worked off of each other.
He worked off of her initial product, basically. The thing is that, like, a lot of... Gunn would mention this, like, outwardly a lot about how the script didn't work for him. And this would come up a lot. And so it became this thing where he would end up, like, constantly talked about as, like, the sole creative element behind this movie.
Yeah.
But then you'd also have people trying to claim that, oh, but it's the first Marvel movie written by a woman. Well, I mean, but maybe it was at one time. But we don't know how much of that was actually retained. We don't know sincerely how much of the original concept is still there. Anyway, we don't know how much of the original concept is still there. We don't know. We don't know.
Yeah.
So it gets to a kind of like he said, she said, and like a lot of his comments fall just shy of like dragging it.
Yeah.
Just shy. And like, there's a lot of dissonance here because it's difficult to reconcile lauding of Perlman's status when the director openly dismisses her script at best.
Yeah.
And then you also have Gunn plagued with a problematic history of edgelord, sexist, homophobic statements that resurfaced before the first film's release, and then different tweets than the blog posts that led to this original outcry.
Yeah.
Were what led to his temporary dismissal from Disney after Guardians 2. He's since apologized. He's openly accepted this attempt at satire was really failed. It wasn't funny, and it punched down at all of those he purported to be an ally for. And it is nice to see that. Like, it is a very sincere apology. I actually, buy it. It's not, haha, sorry you were offended. Mm.
Yeah, he actually says, this is not the person that I want to be.
Yeah, but at the same time, one, those blog posts were written only a year before he was hired by Marvel.
Which is wild.
And we read some excerpts of them, and, they are offensive, but at the same time, it's very, early 2005, just ridiculous edgelord garbage.
I'm laughing because it made me uncomfortable, not because I found it funny.
Yeah, no, but also, it's just wildly, holy shit,
Yeah, but also because I'm laughing at the memory of a lot of what you read me, because it's so stupid. It's not even funny. It sounds like some edgelord in high school trying to shock people, and I'm like,
it sounds like some 17-year-old who just discovered titty magazines or something. It's so silly.
If I wanted anyone to fuck me in the butt, and I'm like, James, what the hell are you doing?
It's very 6 years too late for the haha no homo gay joke thing that everyone in the early 2000s sucked.
Yes.
For people who haven't experienced it, it sucked.
It sucked.
For those of you who did experience it, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
They sucked.
So it was nice to actually have him apologize for it. It was nice to actually see that he has matured, he has grown, he's not doing that shit anymore, and he is straight up took accountability. It was like, I wrote it, I thought I was doing something, I really wasn't. It wasn't funny. It was not funny. That's
because
not
usually
who I
a lot of
be.
people will take, but I intended it as satire as the excuse wholesale. That's it. That's all they say about it. That doesn't make it funny or an appropriate thing to say or anything else.
And he owned that.
Yeah. On the other hand, there are also moments within this film itself where this edgy humor still passes from irreverent into some old habits that haven't quite gone away. Not all the time, and they don't ruin the film.
No.
But there are moments where I just get kind of taken aback by, some of the jokes just don't work for me.
But I'm still surprised they even made it into the movie. Again, this is us going through these movies, I'm surprised at what actually stays in the movie.
Yeah, there's the, I didn't even know you were still here. I get that Peter's kind of a hoe bag. Right. I get it. I can get this. We don't really need to be that dismissive of the girl he was sleeping with.
I still don't know why she's wearing his t-shirt
from when he was 8 years old.
How could she fit in that?
I don't know, because that was a very small child. So I don't really like that joke. I don't like if you're going to establish that Drax is literally literal.
Yeah.
He's not going to be calling Gamora a whore over and over again. I don't care how angry he is at her, because she isn't.
This green whore.
Yeah, it's like, No, she's
I
not,
still don't...
though, and you're very literal, so you wouldn't even be using this terminology. I'm confused now.
Yeah, I still don't know why he called her that.
And he does it, like, twice, because he calls her a wench, and then he calls her a whore later on.
Unless, I guess, it's just an insult that he has on his planet or something. I don't know.
I have no idea, but it's one of those where, like, this makes me overthink the things that you're establishing, and it doesn't work if I have to overthink the joke because it doesn't make sense.
If I have to try to find some justification of, oh, well, maybe that was just, like, the worst insult he could hurl at a woman on his own planet or something. If I have to think that in order to understand how this came about...
You probably should have just left it out.
Yeah.
But I also think that, again, about the Jackson Pollock joke.
Which we have had
I've had an issue with this since the movie came out. I don't understand how someone who left Earth at 8 years old would understand Jackson Pollock enough to make a joke like that.
Yeah.
Moreover, Rocket is not from Earth. How does Rocket understand this joke?
We have had a way too long discussion about this, number one. And number two, it could be argued that maybe he came across other, Terran stuff when he was out and about, found out about Jackson Pollock, and because Rocket is a genetically modified
somebody
genius
knew
raccoon,
about it or something.
Yeah.
Fine, but again, it's one of those that you have to come up with an argument for it to make it make sense. And I've had that issue with that joke alone since the movie came out. I'm like, how the fuck does he know who Jackson Pollock is? He left Earth at best 8. He might have still been 7.
Because, I remember my personal experience is that we were introduced to Jackson Pollock and splatter painting, the concept of splatter painting in elementary school. Because I remember they made the mistake of letting us children try to do splatter paint and then got furious at us for getting paint all over us.
Yeah, but... I don't know. I didn't learn about Pollock until I was, like, in high school, so I guess it just kind of depends. But at the same time, it still feels like such a weird reference.
It is.
For someone who left Earth at 7 or 8 to
Again,
make.
Like I said, I've made the argument of how he would know it, but at the end of the day, it's really not that funny of a joke, and I could think of easily funnier jokes, like, man, she has, like, yeah, you should see my, my hand muscle. One hand's bigger than the other. Something like that.
It's still crass, but there are ways to get around it that don't rely necessarily on
making your
possibly canon-breaking haha reference.
On, like, making the joke that the interior of your ship is cum stained, like there has to be a funnier joke in there, James.
I know that we're talking about a dude who made a series called PG porn, but still, man, like, I've just had issues with it for years. So there are little things in there where I'm just like, okay, I really hope this gets better later, because this is still kind of bad. You also still have, like, the prison rape reference.
Which, honestly, that's probably the least surprising thing in there for me.
It's still rough, man. It's still rough.
Because,
again,
you put all these people...
But it is surprising because we're talking about a fucking Disney film.
Yes, number one, we are talking about that, but also, we still had Tony Stark call a young child a pussy in another movie.
Oh my god, phase 2, man. What?
We also had Stellan Skarsgård running around naked in Stonehenge.
I'm really glad that we just graduated to using shit all the time, like twice a movie now or whatever.
That's all the time in a Marvel.
It is, like, every movie can get away with, like,
one
X amount of uses of shit.
They're like the Family Guy Spider-Man. Everyone gets one. Mm-hmm. Just one.
Mm-hmm.
But, honestly, that's probably the least surprising part, or little, crass reference in there.
It just didn't work for me. But this shouldn't be a surprise when one of the biggest initial proponents for Gunn, and even more outspoken in his disdain for Perlman's script, was Joss Whedon.
God damn it. Every time it's Joss Whedon.
We
but just keep going back to him.
Well, the Whedons are a set of 3 brothers who are into filmmaking. The Guns are also a set of 3 brothers who are into filmmaking, so I would not be surprised if they actually were, like, buds at one time. They share a lot of overlap actors. They share a lot of, like, initial early 2000s humor.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't really be this surprised by this. However, Whedon, once again, is responsible for major changes to canon, including the shift of Peter's backstory from his Vader-esque space Roman Emperor father, Jason, who happens to be the reason Peter's middle name is Jason. According to the Making of the Marvel Cinematic Universe book, Whedon detested the reveal of Peter's connection to space royalty when asked to revise the script ahead of Age of Ultron. Because they kept bringing him in to revise all the scripts before Age of Ultron.
Okay, but why do you detest
and how does it make
royalty?
It any different from making him
a celestial?
Half a space god.
Like, what the
It's basically the same thing.
It is the same thing!
Also, like, making him half celestial actually gives me more questions than answers now.
Making him half celestial makes him ridiculously OP if you actually stick with it.
Except that, we'll get to this when we get to Second Guardians. I don't want to get into this right now, because it's some messy shit I don't understand.
It's dumb, and I hate it.
It is. Contention with the writing credits aside, there is a lot that still works here. Perlman has even stated that Gunn infused the story with more humor, which is something that the movie needed. The characters connect even if not all the humor lands. The opening and climax of the film are both fucking gut punches. I cry every time.
Me too.
Every time.
And if I don't cry, I do tear up. I get the waters, the vapors in there.
It's been worse over the last couple of years for me personally, because those scenes with Peter's mom hit different.
I mean, those always get me.
I mean, they always got me, but they hit real different when you've gone through it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, oh man, that is mean.
Or when you've had, like, mother figures in your life actually die of cancer, that stuff really hits.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's rough. It's rough.
They're
gut punches. They're not bad gut punches. They're rough.
I still cannot believe that cold open.
Oh my god. It is...
That has to be
so mean.
That has to be the ballsiest cold open.
The cold open, and then you immediately turn to Peter fucking dancing.
Mm-hmm.
Just... Oh my... I mean, you need it after you give somebody that kind of gut punch. But, like, there are so many things that work here.
Mm-hmm.
You have, like, these gut punches with the outward processing of grief and the inability of an 8-year-old to accept it.
Yeah.
This is one of the first ones that really deals with grief in this heavy of a way, though Phase 4 is basically everything deals with grief now.
Everything.
I mean, thanks post-pandemic, everything is post-grief now.
Yep.
And we'll get to the famous soundtrack in a bit. Like, there's a lot of things that work here.
Mm-hmm.
Gunn also beat out other considered directors that would later tackle other MCU projects, including Peyton Reed, who took over for Ant-Man once Edgar Wright left, as well as Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck, who we've covered in Captain Marvel.
Oh.
The film also cites inspiration from other works such as The Dirty Dozen, the Mass Effect series, which I can see, especially with the way that they set up
I could see
Nova.
because
it looks a lot like the Mass Effect Citadel.
And I could see a lot of the Dirty Dozen influence.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
Again, I can see it all over the place. I grew up with Flash Gordon. My mom loved Flash Gordon, so... Flash! Ah! And you also get, like, the music, which is... I think Flash Gordon's main inspo is the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing's... I mean, that whole movie's a Queen soundtrack movie.
Yes.
So, like... And then you move to this, which is all, like, 70s pop music. And then you have Farscape, which I can absolutely see, especially in Peter and Gamora's interactions with each other. And Star Wars, which, duh. And it constantly references Footloose. It's not a lot like Footloose, but it constantly references Footloose.
Which brings us right around to the Kevin Bacon again.
Yeah, every time. So now all I need is X-Men to interact with...
Directly with Kevin Bacon.
Well, I need X-Men to cross over the Guardians at some point, because not only do you have the Kevin Bacon references, but you have the John Stamos reference. I need it. So, the difference, really, between Gunn's problematic history, which is why I bring it up here, and, for instance, our continued disdain for Joss Whedon's treatment of his co-workers, other creatives, and everybody else.
And just writing in general.
Is that Gunn can apologize, and as far as we know, the behavior stops as he does attempt to learn from it.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't really had any further homophobic blog posts with 2005 era no homo all over them, as far as I know, anyway. Nor a history of abuse by Gunn directed towards writers, actors, etc. Yeah. Whedon, on the other hand, has an alleged history of callous comments and behavior, and this seems to follow him from project to project, even up through his recent work on Justice League, where this really came to a head. Mm-hmm. This history is important to note, but in the case of Guardians of the Galaxy, it doesn't dampen the enjoyment of the product, because the director doesn't continue to just
and I will say
sit in this shit.
And I will state this bit, that when you had James Gunn fired, there were people in that movie, in Guardians, that were like, I am going to quit. I will refuse to do any further movies unless he's returned, unless he's reinstated.
Yeah, people were upset, and there's a reason.
Meanwhile, no one came to bat for Joss.
No, because Joss was openly trying to defame the actor, calling him out.
Yeah.
And it finally took the other actors on set going, no, this other actor was right, this sucked.
Yeah.
You know, and then you open up the skeletons of Joss's previous history and stuff.
That to me speaks volumes. The fact that you had the actors come to James Gunn's defense, multiple actors, multiple people that worked with him, singing his praises and defending him, while it was just crickets for Joss. Which that to me says that everything people have been saying is true, and he, in fact, does not actually treat his actors the way that a good director should.
Exactly. And that makes a wild amount of difference here.
Yes.
Because as much as I can kind of have issues with the way that Nicole Perlman was treated, with some of the sour jokes that just don't really work.
Yeah.
You know, or even, like, his past behavior. If this past behavior was a thing that wasn't past behavior, but still current behavior, yeah, it'd be awful. But it's not, and the juxtaposition is important to note there, which is why I bring it up.
Yeah, it is.
Because no, it's not really that important in the large scheme of things, but if I'm going to continue to rail about
Whedon and all
Whedon's
of his
alleged behavior, I want to be able to juxtapose it and, you know, like, bring up the problematic stuff when it is there.
And also, you know, if we do go in on Joss, then we should go in on other directors that have a history of doing the same thing. Yeah, that's only fair.
Fair. Yeah. Fair's fair. So, Guardians of the Galaxy follows the origins of Peter Jason Quill, a child from Missouri who's abducted by aliens on the evening of the traumatic death of his mother.
What a sentence.
I mean, Quill has grown up with a group of space pirates referred to as the Ravagers, who have a reputation in seedier circles of the galaxy. Taking it on himself to seek out one of the leads he'd overheard about, Quill tracks down a mysterious orb in an attempt to fleece the artifact for himself. However, the orb is being sought by others with even worse reputations than a group of rugged space thieves, including a religious Kree zealot, Ronan the Accuser, who in chronology was introduced to us by this title in Captain Marvel, though the Kree seem to have washed their hands of association with him over the last 20 years between Captain Marvel and here.
Yeah.
Knowing Ronan seeks the artifact gives Quill problems in finding a buyer, as no one wants to invoke Ronan's wrath, especially not those living in the Nova Empire on the planet Xandar, as the two governments have a particularly tense history of warring and other disagreements.
Which I still don't understand any of that. And I really wish at some point the MCU would actually go in on that and why I'm supposed to care about it.
Bring me more Nova Corps shit. I'm very here.
Yeah, tell me why I'm supposed to care, because you can say all this stuff, but I have no idea what you're talking about.
I still wish we had more on the Kree in general, but they only seem to be brought up here, and in Captain Marvel, and kind of in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but it really doesn't connect to either of these things.
And yes, I know we could probably just read the comics, but I want to see them actually do it in the MCU.
See, and the way that it's done in the comics wouldn't necessarily be the way that it was done in the MCU
anyway. Because of how much they've changed it.
Yeah.
So I need them to actually expand on that.
Yeah, precisely.
Please.
I agree. So Ronan has taken it upon himself to cleanse Xandar for his people, and while the Kree largely shrug their shoulders at pleas from Nova to curb his rage, he's clearly acting on his own. In fact, he seeks the orb on behalf of a mysterious godfather-like benefactor, Thanos.
I'll make you an offer you can't refuse.
I mean, kinda.
Pretty much. That
sounds a lot like that. Dispatching one of Thanos' quote daughters, basically he kills a bunch of people and then kind of just appropriates like the one person left into just doing stuff for him. He grooms young girls into doing things for him.
He kidnaps these girls, destroys their families, grooms them into what he wants, tortures them, and performs experiments on them on top of, you know,
to make them like living warriors and stuff.
Modifying their bodies and shit. It's actually really fucked up when you stop and dig into it.
It's living weapons is basically what he's doing. So we don't mean grooming in the sexual assault sense. No. We mean it purely in just
him taking these girls and turning them into literal pawns in his game.
So Gamora is dispatched by Ronan to retrieve the orb, and Quill and Gamora get into a fight over the artifact, which is further complicated by the Ravagers putting a bounty out on Quill's head for his renegade actions, as bounty hunters Rocket and Groot come to collect at the same time Gamora does. Like, these sentences get insane.
Yes.
This fight lands them all in Nova's off-planet prison, the Kiln, where we're also introduced to a previous inmate, Drax, who wants to kill Gamora in retaliation for Ronan's murder of his family. Instead, the five form a very dysfunctional coterie to break out of prison and sell the orb to Gamora's original buyer, which has the potential to make them billionaires.
Yes.
The gang makes it to Nowhere, which is, you know, like the place where the buyer is. But their negotiations to sell the orb, revealed to be an Infinity Stone, which is an object of godly power and potential destruction, are cut short when Drax contacts Ronan through intergalactic comms and instigates the fight for vengeance he's always wanted.
Yeah. Like an idiot.
Thanks, Drax. This goes poorly for everyone, and in desperation, Peter gives himself willingly back to the Ravagers when Ronan retrieves the orb as Gamora's, quote, sister nearly kills her, because she's still working with Ronan. So, cleverly disguising their motives as a heist, the team eventually unites with the Ravagers to protect Xandar and retrieve the orb from Ronan before he can obliterate the planet. Why he wants to do this, I wish we knew more about.
I really wish we knew.
Kree culture at all to make this make sense, but whatever. This leaves the Guardians to square off with Ronan directly, well, Ronan and his Infinity Stone. And there you go, there's the movie.
Jesus. I mean, on paper, yeah, it sounds ridiculous, but when you watch it, it's still a very solid movie.
Yes.
It still holds up pretty well for the most part.
Oh, yeah.
And, like,
I love it still, even if there are little jokes in there that really just don't work for me.
Though every time they introduce an Infinity Stone now, I can't help but remember that fucking scene from Loki where they're like, oh yeah, we use them as paperweights.
I know, it's like...
And I'm like, my girl died for this shit. Are you kidding me? No. I refuse. I refuse to accept that blasé attitude towards Infinity Stones. Fuck you.
I mean, yeah, we'll get to that later.
Still mad about it. I
know. So Guardians of the Galaxy stars Chris Pratt as Peter Quill / Star-Lord, Zoe Saldana as Gamora, Dave Bautista as Drax, Bradley Cooper is the voice of Rocket, and Vin Diesel as the voice of Groot. Other prominent actors include Michael Rooker as Yondu, Lee Pace as Ronan, Karen Gillan as Nebula, Glenn Close as Irani Rael, I think is the name of the Nova Corps leader.
It's very close to Irulan.
Yeah, it is, actually. What the heck?
And they're both blonde.
Stop this. It hurts me. Dang. John C. Reilly, I don't remember his character's name. It's like Roman Day or something like that.
I really do like his character, though.
His character's very cute. Sean Gunn as Kraglin. He's one of the Ravagers.
Mm-hmm.
Jaimon Hansu. So we said this wrong. There is no D pronounceable in that name.
No, I know there's no D in there. I told you it's Jaimon Hansu.
Yeah, I fucked up. I actually looked up how to say it this time. Jaimon Hansu as Korath. I almost forgot the character's name. Who, in chronological order, we were also introduced to in Captain Marvel, as he worked not quite alongside Ronan, but sort of with Ronan. Whatever. And Benicio del Toro was Tanelier Tavon, the Collector.
God.
You're welcome. So this movie probably has some of the most cameos in it, next to, like, Iron Man.
Nice.
So we have Stan Lee as some random dude trying to pick up chicks on Xandar.
Yes.
Wyatt Olaf as young Peter Quill, and he's the kid from It.
He's Stanley in It.
I'm so glad I put those right next to each other.
Oh.
I didn't do that on purpose, but I'm really used
yeah,
now.
he's Stanley.
Laura Haddock as Meredith Quill. She'll come back as Meredith in Volume 2 as well, but we also covered her in Captain America 1 because she plays the girl that, you know, is fawning over Cap at one of the USO shows.
I would love an autograph.
Who we've retconned as
retroactively
Peter's
saying,
grandma.
Yes.
Josh Brolin is Thanos, so he's replacing the actor who just kind of filled in for, like, the final credit scene of the Avengers.
Yes.
Alexis Denisof reprises his role as the Other from the Avengers and promptly eats shit.
Good.
The character does. Greg Henry as Grandpa Quill. Spencer Wilding as the guard with the Walkman, and Spencer Wilding was the physical actor for Vader in Rogue One.
Nice.
Actor-director Lloyd Kaufman is an inmate. He's like a B-movie actor and director. He did movies like The Toxic Avenger. Then you also had James Gunn as one of the Sakaran soldiers. Nathan Fillion, there's an extra I in there. Nathan Fillion does the voice of the inmate with the bad rape joke.
Oh.
Unfortunately. Rob Zombie is a Ravager navigator, like
my
a voiceover.
God.
Tyler Bates, who is the composer of the score, was also a Ravager pilot.
Oh.
And Seth Green is Howard the Duck.
Of course he was Howard the Duck.
Yes. So, my favorite part of this are the other actors that they considered for Peter Quill, because they famously had a very difficult time casting Peter Quill, and they went all over the place.
God.
And
What
some of these are very, very weird. So,
this is the first time I'm seeing this list.
other
actually.
actors they considered were Joel Edgerton,
No.
Jack Houston, who was in Pride and
What
Prejudice
the
and Zombies. He was Ben-Hur in the Ben-Hur remake.
The bad
and
Ben
he
Hur
was
remake.
he was like Rosalie's creepy ass husband in the flashback in Twilight Eclipse.
The one that she killed?
Yes. They also considered Jim Sturgis, which is
Oh my God.
I can kind of see it, but it still would have been weird. He's too British. He's very too British. Eddie Redmayne.
No!
Also, before he was cast otherwise, Lee Pace
Oh my God.
auditioned for Peter Quill. Moreover, they also almost considered Zachary Levi.
Honestly, that probably...
I would have been really into Zach Levi,
Yeah,
though,
that-
because he has similar energy.
He does.
I would have been into it.
I wouldn't have been too mad about that, actually.
They also considered Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
No. No.
And Michael Rosenbaum, who was Lex Luthor in Smallville.
No.
We also saw him in James Gunn's PG porn. And he was cast otherwise as, like, one of the, Sovereign in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. So he still gets to be in Guardians, he's just not Peter Quill.
I would not.
And then you also had John Gallagher Jr., who was in Westworld Season 3, which we haven't watched yet, The Newsroom, and he had previous Broadway experience with Spring Awakening and American Idiot. But Gunn's second choice for Peter Quill, like right behind Chris Pratt, was Glenn Howerton, who plays Dennis in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
No! That would have
who
been
also
so
connects
weird.
to Joss Whedon because of Serenity.
Oh my god.
How weird is that? Like,
That's so weird, James.
I was sitting
What the
here
fuck?
considering what this movie would have been like
Oh
if we
my
had Glenn
God.
Howerton in it, and I'm like,
No.
this movie would have been really fucking weird.
It would have been way too weird.
Yeah, so...
Like, he works on Always Sunny, yeah, because that's what that show is.
And he's
but
also getting a movie.
Yeah,
Like,
but this...
Always Sunny's getting a movie, so I'm like, you know what?
This...
But I can see it because it's... Always Sunny is absolutely Gunn's brand of humor.
Yeah.
100%. So I
It
can kind of
is.
see it.
But at the same
time,
that's
he's not Chris Pratt, and it's just very weird.
But also, that's just not Peter Quill. That's not Peter Quill.
I would take Zach Levi over this, honestly.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt makes me chuckle, but
I knew it would. I knew it would because you love him.
As much as I love him, I don't think he would have, fit the role as well as
he's too serious.
I think Zach Levi would have fit fine.
But he's too busy being Fandral. The best Fandral. I'll fight.
She will die on that hill.
I will die on this hill. So there are other weird choices here.
Oh
So the ones with Drax kind of make sense to me, to be fair. It was almost Jason Momoa.
Oh my god.
As well as Isaiah Mustafa, who's the Old Spice guy.
Oh. And he's in It.
He was also in It.
I wouldn't have been mad about him being Drax, actually. I would have found it weird if Jason was Drax.
Yes, because it would have been way too similar to Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it would have been way too similar to Khal Drogo there.
Thank you, I was forgetting the character's name.
Drogo!
And then they also had Brian Patrick Wade, whose filmography I didn't really recognize a ton of stuff, but he ended up in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. instead. So, Gamora... Before they hired Zoe Saldana, they actually offered the role initially to Amanda Seyfried.
What the fuck?
Who turned it down due to the extensive makeup and questioning the commercial viability of the project. Can you imagine this movie with Glenn Howerton and Amanda Seyfried instead of Chris Pratt and Zoe?
Oh. No, I can't.
Like,
actually.
I love Amanda Seyfried, but that is, like, the biggest miscast I've ever heard of.
Such a mind-bending...
It's really weird, right?
I can't. I don't...
When I told you these were weird, I really meant it. This movie had the potential to be just really, really weird. Like, you thought that Sam Rockwell auditioning for Tony Stark was weird.
Yes, I still think it's weird.
Welcome to what almost was Guardians of the Galaxy.
Ugh.
Absolutely bizarre. So, Vin Diesel also did the voice and the mocap for Groot.
Yeah.
And according to Vin Diesel, this was done in December of 2013, and the first time I came back to dealing with human beings after dealing with death. So playing a character who celebrates life in the way Groot does was very nice.
Aww.
Because this was done right after Paul Walker died.
Oh.
So, like, that whole scene with Groot at the end when he's, like, doing the nest thing... hurts that much more when you know that he's pulling from, like, that grief with Paul to do that. Like, I'm tearing up even thinking about that right now.
Yeah, you were crying when that scene happened.
That scene always gets me. It's really upsetting. But knowing that it's... Because I'd forgotten when that actually happened. Not that it had happened, I just forgot, like, the timing of it. But it was right about the time they were making this movie.
God, that sucks.
And I never really put together, you're dealing with this movie that's really, really rooted in people dealing with death. And then you have, like, that whole moment when Rocket's like, everybody's got dead people, and Groot's like...
Yeah, Groot's reaction to that
and like, Rocket's like, I don't care if it's mean. And it's like... Holy shit, that hits different when you know that, like, Vin Diesel in particular is dealing with this.
Well, yeah, Groot's reaction to where he gasps and covers his mouth, that's all of our reactions to Rocket saying that.
I mean, Rocket's not wrong, but, some of this stuff just hits
after he
a lot harder now.
After he contextualizes what he's getting at, yeah, he has a valid point, just because you have experienced grief, that's no reason to drag other people down with you, sure.
Yeah.
But also, damn, Rocket.
Yeah, Rocket's Rocket.
He is. He beats up grass. Like, what?
Yeah.
What else do we expect?
Paul Walker passed away, in the summer of 2013, I think. So this was, just months after that had happened.
I didn't even like the Fast and the Furious movies, but I still felt bad.
Yeah, I worked in the theater when the second one came out. That was the one that just had Paul Walker in it.
Yeah.
I didn't hate it, but, it wasn't, my favorite thing ever. But it was still, man, that sucks.
It does.
I feel that way about a lot of actors that we lose too soon, even if, I wasn't the biggest fan of whatever X character they were playing at the time or whatever. Yeah. It still sucks. It's really awful.
It does.
And Groot was also written and based on Gunn's dog.
That makes sense, actually.
I love Gunn's dog, though. His dog's fucking adorable.
Yes.
So Gunn said all the Guardians start out the movie as bastards except Groot. He's an innocent. He's really 100% deadly and 100% sweet.
No.
He's caught up in Rocket's life, really.
No, it's true, though.
It's so cute, though. So Bradley Cooper did the voice for Rocket, and they, modeled some of the facial expressions on him. But for the most part, they, based it on, doing a lot of, footage of the raccoon, because you can't mocap the raccoon. They're not going to do what you want.
No.
But you can do, filming the raccoon as, reference or whatever.
Yeah.
But on set, Sean Gunn, James Gunn's brother, stood in as Rocket on set. Yeah. So a lot of, the movements of Rocket were done by Gunn.
Yeah, I think I actually remember seeing...
Other Gunn. Sean Gunn.
I think I remember seeing, set pictures of that.
It's almost as weird as that, one mocap behind-the-scenes shot of, Twilight Eclipse, where you see, Taylor Lautner in, the mocap suit, and,
Kristen Stewart's
just, petting his head. It's so funny. That's the kind of vibe I get from it sometimes, looking at, the footage of, Sean Gunn on set.
Yeah.
It's really wild.
It's so silly.
It is. It's really funny. And then you had Karen Gillan actually researched ancient Sparta for Nebula, and she shaved her head IRL.
Yeah, she did.
Because I did not expect her to do that, and I was like...
Yeah, she did. That's why she had short hair for a long time.
My horror. I'm like, your hair was so pretty.
Yeah, that's why she had really short hairdo for a while. Mm-hmm. It was because she did shave it.
And then Glenn Close's Irani Rael was intended to evoke Judi Dench as M in Nick Fury's role, but I'm sorry, as much as you're going for this, and you're going for, Judi Dench as M or whatever, this is no Skyfall, and Nova has not enough connection to the Guardians, any of them, but Peter especially, to make me buy Nova as M
you're just
to Peter's Bond. Excuse you, this is not Skyfall.
You're just saying this because we watched Skyfall in the theater a few months ago, and we had to do a whole James Bond Daniel Craig rewatch, and
yeah, and I'm still upset.
I mean, I am too.
I'm still upset, but no,
that's where this tangent is really coming from.
Okay, but it's still not. It's still not the same. It's still not the same.
They're just inspired by. They weren't trying to be the same.
This is no Skyfall, Glenn. Damn it.
Calm down.
No.
No.
So, I don't have a ton on cinematography other than there's color and it's gorgeous and the aliens look like aliens.
Yeah, they brought back color, thank God.
So the cinematographer is Ben Davis, who we've actually covered as cinematographer because he did Captain Marvel. We've also dug into his previous work and his other work with Marvel. The only update since that episode is that he's also been tapped to work on Sony/Marvel's Kraven the Hunter, which is attached to Sony's Spider-Man universe, because they just announced that movie, and apparently he's the cinematographer for that. So that's really all I have on the cinematography, because we've covered Ben Davis before, other than the fact that James used a lot of practical effects in this movie, and you can also tell they thought very hard about, like, making the aliens look different. They gave him a lot of, like, really vibrant colors and stuff.
They're gonna make him that guy.
Yeah, that's Kraven the Hunter. You're welcome.
Oh my god.
Em just looked this up, and, yeah.
This is what I expect Joe Exotic to think that he looks like in his head.
Yeah, guarantee.
This is what Joe Exotic thinks he looks like in his head.
Yeah. He thinks he's Kraven the Hunter.
This is how he sees himself.
Yeah.
My god.
The fact that they made a movie about just this dude, wild to me. The fact that they tapped Aaron Taylor Johnson for this.
I thought he was dead.
Well, not in the Sony-verse, he's not.
Not in the Sony-verse.
I mean, how many actors have we had play multiples now? I mean, Gemma Chan was allowed to do it.
I know.
I mean, she was still allowed to do it. Laura Haddock was allowed to do it.
I don't want
a huge role there, but
I don't want to talk about Gemma Chan playing a shitty Cersei.
Well, we're not talking about that today.
Thank God.
But yeah, like, I don't have much to say other than this movie looks very pretty.
It does. It's a very pretty looking movie.
It looks as pretty as the soundtrack feels.
But also, it explains why Captain Marvel looked so nice in the space scenes.
Yeah, because they look very, very similar, which I love. I love that there is visual consistency to Cosmic Marvel, at least at this point.
Because, see, that's also one of the things I really liked about Thor, is that it was colorful, it was vibrant. And if you're going to do...
Up until it wasn't.
If you're going to do space like this, then, yeah, go balls out. Make it colorful, make it fun, make it look wondrous and awe-inspiring. Because if you've seen those pictures of the actual nebulas we have out there... They're full of color and light.
They're very pretty, yeah. Yeah, I'm very tired of, like, dark, dingy space movies.
No.
Frankly. So I'm really glad that we didn't go here up until we went here.
That's reserved for the Alien franchise and should stay there, because that's the aesthetic for that. We don't need it anywhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, the soundtrack was scored by Tyler Bates, whose other work also includes a bunch of work with James Gunn. So he did both Guardians movies, he did Slither, he did Super, he did a bunch of stuff.
Man, I really do need to show you Slither at some point.
Yeah, he did a ton of work with Zack Snyder, including Dawn of the Dead, 300, Watchmen, Sucker Punch.
Oh, yeah, I remember him from Watchmen.
He also did work with David Leitch and whoever ended up doing John Wick after that, because he's done all 3 John Wick movies.
Ooh.
He also did Deadpool 2 and Atomic Blonde.
Atomic Blonde was good.
And he's also done work with Rob Zombie on The Devil's Rejects, his Werewolf Women of the SS Grindhouse short.
Oh my god.
Both Halloweens and some other stuff. And he also did the score for the Netflix Punisher.
What? Damn.
Which is what makes me so mad that the score for this movie is so just mediocre and background noise in comparison. I mean, anything's going to be in comparison to the awesome mix, which fine.
Yeah.
But the score is such Marvel house style, just meh.
Yeah.
That I'm still irritated by it. Because I remember we'd get to the score at one point and I'm like, yeah, it's just music. Like, whatever.
It really is overshadowed by the awesome mix. Because
I mean, how can anything not be? But
because that really is the thing that everyone wanted to buy. They didn't care about the score. They wanted Awesome Mix Volume 1, including myself. I remember the day I bought that CD.
Yeah. Like, and it sucks because, like, there is no excuse for this. I mean, like, look at the rest of his work. The rest of his work is cool sounding, even if the movies are kind of questionably okay.
Yeah, I remember those soundtracks were good.
Yeah.
Especially the
So why is this one so mediocre? I'm mad.
The John Wick and Atomic Blonde ones especially.
Oh my god, the Atomic Blonde one's a banger.
Yeah.
He's made so many bangers and this one just isn't it.
I don't know.
I'm just sad.
Yeah.
However, at the end of the day, like we've noted, the score is largely house style and serves as background noise when the real star is the awesome mix, added to the film by Gunn as Peter's connection to his mother.
Yes.
These period songs were curated by Gunn, used as both a background soundtrack and present prop with Peter's Walkman and the spaceship tape deck, not star deck. Tape deck on the starship.
The holodeck.
No.
Yes.
The selection includes mostly obscure pre-1988 pop songs, largely 60s and 70s, such as Hooked on a Feeling by Blue Swede, though the revival was really made famous by Ally McBeal in the 90s and the Dancing Baby.
That weird, creepy dancing baby.
The little dancing baby. Moonage Daydream by Bowie, which Bowie's not that obscure, but that song is really not one of Bowie's, like...
most famous
songs. Come and Get Your Love by Redbone, which opens the film, and it's perfect because originally I think they were going to use Hooked on a Feeling there, and it doesn't work. Like that song just so perfectly opens the film, and it's just
yeah. I have a whole tangent that I need to get to when you're done reading this.
Oh yeah, and then you had Spirit in the Sky, which was used on the soundtrack by Norman Greenbaum. It was used for the trailers, but did not end up in the final cut of the film.
Yeah, I remember it being in the trailers.
Yeah, but I also bought this soundtrack on CD, and then I also bought it on cassette. So the soundtrack serves as a very literal prop, like I noted, and it was immensely well received and super popular. Like, it was probably one of the most popular things about this movie, and it's probably the best soundtrack Marvel's done for anything. And
it's definitely one of the most popular.
And it was released as a cassette tape for Record Store Day in 2014, and it was done over Black Friday.
Oh my God.
I remember this because I had to find a very specific record store to go buy this damn cassette tape that I can't even play because I don't have a cassette tape player.
You mean a Walkman?
I mean, I have one, but it doesn't work because it's cosplay prop.
For shame.
For shame. But no, I don't have a tape player at all. I want it for the aesthetic. Yeah, okay, your tangent that you wanted to get to.
Well, number one, I grew up listening and trying to steal my mother's Sony Walkman all the time.
Good.
Especially because she had to keep replacing them because they kept breaking. She broke them, not me. And
I'm really surprised that his still works, quite frankly.
Right? Oh, I'm surprised his tape hasn't gotten all tangled into the spokes like mine used to after I would replay them over and over again. That's what would happen to mine. I want to know how his have never done that.
I mean...
Sir, James, Gunn, Madam, whatever. Words just coming out of my mouth.
ADHD.
But, like, I remember the first time I watched this movie, and that opening with that song, I'm Not in Love, immediately fell in love with it, and I think it was actually the first time I had ever actually heard it. In that cold open.
Oh, the one where he's, like, sitting in the hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, when I say opens the film, I mean opens the film after the title card, not the cold open.
Yeah, the cold open with that, when you hear it, like, slowly fade in like that.
Like, it's kind of like music from another room.
Oh, yes. I immediately fell in love with that song. It really... And then the cold opening, of course, really fucked me up.
I mean... Yeah.
As everybody, I think. Yeah. But what I loved about it is that we then jump years into the future, and we see Peter, dancing, but it shows... Someone... I can't even remember where I read it, but... Someone basically wrote about how inspiring it was to actually see that scene because it opens on a kid who's grieving, who's scared, he's crying, and then you later see him as an adult and you see him as strong and resourceful, and he still gets joy out of music. And
people writing Peter is stupid still pisses me off because he's not dumb.
No, he's not dumb. But
he can be emotionally stupid, but he's not dumb.
Yeah. Like, you see this kid who clearly got past that grief. He still ended up growing up and living a life. Mm-hmm. And that was, that's what that scene meant to me. It showed how you were able to get past that. Even though he clearly still has some shit to process, he still was able to survive that kind of loss.
Well, and grief is not a thing that you just kind of
get over
and deal with it once and you're done.
No,
like, that's not how it works.
No, you have to work through it. And and also immediately when I started hearing the Redbone song, like, I just fell in love with it like that. And I was like, okay, I love this movie, and this is definitely something special. This is absolutely something we haven't had before in Marvel. And I ended up being right.
And
but, like,
something we haven't really had since.
But, like, that scene in particular meant a lot to me because of a lot of the loss that I've had to go through in the past few years of my life. And so when I saw them basically mocking that scene in Endgame, I'm sorry. I know there's some people that probably thought it was funny. It wasn't funny to me.
I don't think... Again, we're going to get to this.
We're going to
have so many unpopular opinions when it comes to Infinity War and
But
Endgame.
I'm just bringing it up right now because of connection with that specific scene. Because
there are a lot of things that emotionally piss me off about those movies. That is absolutely one of them, and I agree with you.
Because going back to that scene and seeing it as it originally was, yeah, it actually just made me madder at the fact that you think it's funny to make fun of this scene when it's like, no, this was more than just a goofy dance number to me. This was, basically showing that this kid who had suffered such a major loss in his life still managed to grow into someone who wasn't defined by that.
Yeah.
And then you basically just punch him for laughs and steal a stone from him. Sorry, I don't really find it funny, and you can call me, taking it too seriously or a party pooper or whatever.
The treatment of the Guardians in those movies will always piss me off. There are a lot of treatments of certain characters that I am a little attached to in those movies that will always piss me off. So I agree with you.
Especially when we see in this movie how, yes, resourceful Peter is, how he is probably the most emotionally mature out of all the Guardians. He's the glue that holds them together.
He absolutely is the linchpin of the group, and to make him, like, the butt of everybody's joke suddenly, and the guy everybody hates, and it's so funny to shit on Peter.
And he's so stupid, and he's so emotionally, like...
Why? Like, I can buy that he wouldn't want to sacrifice Gamora or whatever. Like, I get that, because he still has...
Attachment issues.
Fine.
Yeah.
It still wouldn't happen like this.
No, and also, not only that, but you have the Guardians coming together and being a family way sooner and way more believably than the Avengers. Like, I don't believe...
And then they suddenly don't act like one when you insert the Avengers. This is why I'm just like, the Avengers are not a family. They're co-workers at best.
No, see, I didn't believe that I didn't feel that the Avengers were truly a family until we got to Endgame. And when I saw how they were grieving, when I saw how they came together to work together.
Some of them.
Shush. I'm having a point here, ma'am. When we got to that point, and I saw that, then yeah, they felt more like an actual family. It took all the way to Endgame for me to believe that they were an actual family. I mean, granted, I still felt like, certain Avengers were clearly closer to others than other ones were. Steve and Nat. But, yeah, I believe the Guardians came together more as a found family in one movie and way more believably. And they all just fit together. And then you go and you not only ruin their whole dynamic and make it all shitty, but then you turn them all into the butt of jokes and make them stupid when every one of them have been shown to be way more resourceful and just naturally funny in the two previous fucking movies where they were the stars. I don't understand how when you introduce them into these bigger crossovers that all of a sudden their whole characterization, all their development just goes right out the fucking window.
Yeah, it's like Peter hadn't even been in 2 films.
Yeah.
And, again, I don't know what happened. We're getting way ahead of ourselves, but I don't know what happened to Marcus McFeely between Cap 1 and Endgame that changed their outlook on how they write grief so wildly differently.
Like, they went from doing
feels like
that...
there are so many things in Endgame that feel like such a slap in the face, and it's
to everything that came before it.
Its processing of grief is absolutely fucking one of them. And it's one of the things I hate the most about Infinity War, is because they do this, we killed half the galaxy, as emotional manipulation to the audience, because it doesn't matter, and we all know it doesn't matter.
Yeah, we're doing it
garbage.
We're doing it to all upset you and make you cry, and yet we're just gonna bring everybody back.
Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good. It's not that sad. He's fine.
I mean, it is sad because it's Tom Holland.
No, I cried more at No Way Home than I ever did in relation to Tony Stark as Uncle Ben. And I will not accept Tony Stark as Uncle Ben ever in my life. Bite me, Marvel, he's not Uncle Ben. We're way off course here, but yeah, like...
I mean, we will revisit this again, clearly, but I just want to state for the record.
Yeah, the depiction of grief in this movie and the processing of grief is really important, and to kind of miss that is to miss the point of really the emotional undercurrent of this movie.
And I'd be willing to say it's one of the main reasons why people ended up loving the Guardians so much when it came out.
Yeah, because they're relatable.
Yeah.
Instead of just making them, like, token, comedic relief.
Space dummies.
Quote, unquote.
They're literally a stupider version of Spaceballs.
Yeah, I hate it.
Yeah.
I just...
A stupid, unfunny version of Spaceballs.
In terms of this movie...
Yeah.
Overall rating.
5 out of 5.
I mean, obviously it's a 5 out of 5.
Yes.
We both think this. It's perfect.
Yes. It's a perfect movie. Even with some of the jokes not landing, it's still a very, very solid movie. We still tear up at parts.
I sob through it. It's fine.
We realized a bunch of stuff that we didn't really notice before. We made all these connections, and it's still really fucking good.
Dennis. Jason Quill.
No. No. And also just the chemistry between the whole cast was, like, perfect.
Gamora Seyfried.
No, God. Ew. I'm sorry, Amanda. I don't mean to go ew, but it's just...
I love Amanda Seyfried, but it's so weird.
I like Amanda Seyfried. It's just, that's my knee-jerk reaction to her as Gamora. Ew!
It's just weird.
No!
It's just weird. But yeah, everything about this is perfect.
It is. The direction was great. The soundtrack is immaculate. Which, by the way, when we get to Volume 2, they almost didn't get Blue Sky to open, Mr. Blue Sky to open that movie. Because the band basically went on to say, we've had so many other people come to us to ask for, the right to use this movie in their film, and they end up just cutting it and don't use it at all. And we thought it was going to happen again, so we were pleased to see that James
opens the movie with it.
Not only did he open it, but he played most of the song, which is one of the first times that's ever really happened for them.
Yeah.
So good for ELO on coming through, and I can't wait to talk about that soundtrack when we get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, this movie it's still one of the best Marvels ever made.
5.
It is. It's one of the best Marvels ever made.
So thank you for listening to this episode of Fansplained. If you enjoy what we do, consider donating on Ko-fi. Everything we make goes right back into the production quality of the show. We appreciate all of our subscribers and everything you do. All right. And we're thankful for anything from Hulk smashing that like button to your questions and comments on each episode, and especially sharing the show with your friends. And my Matthew McConaughey impression, apparently.
All right.
Fansplained is a weekly media criticism and deep dive podcast, and we are currently still working our way through the chronological order of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This week we'll also be doing our reaction to Moon Knight as it's released, so we'll probably be doing that within the next couple days, since it's on right now, as we record this.
Yeah.
Next week we'll be covering Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Volume 2.
You can find our updates here on YouTube as well as on Twitter and Coffee at FANSPLAINED. If you want more of our conversations on the MCU and other fandoms, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell for new episode notifications.
Oh, and really quick, before we do go, I want to recommend that if no one is following James Gunn on Spotify, that you probably should, because he has a lot of very interesting playlists, including Meredith Quill's Ultimate Awesome Mix playlist, which has a lot of good bangers on it.
Hell yeah. So next time, until next time, salt shakers.
All right.
All right. This has been Ryan
And
with the Fansplained podcast, and we will see you next week.
Bye.